So my wife and I, our backgrounds are in fisheries.
Okay.
She worked in fisheries in another country in the Pacific called Samoa, and I worked in the broader Pacific region in fisheries. And my background is tech as well. So I'm a software developer by training, and I guess we saw the opportunity of traceability, really because nobody else in the Pacific was doing it, and so we figured that this was an area that we were both passionate about, and that we really wanted to commit our time to doing. So we left our jobs and we moved back to Fiji. At that time we were living out of Fiji. We moved back to my home country, Fiji, and then we started Traceable Solutions from then. The other challenging space for us was just getting started. Neither of us had any business experience. We've never, this is our first business, and just going through the loopholes, going through the various regulations, and yeah, it was a really difficult challenge for us.
Welcome to Seedstars podcast. Seedstars is an organization that aims to have an impact in emerging markets by supporting the local entrepreneurs, investing in their ventures, but also sharing their story globally because we really believe they are the true heroes. We'll be listening to them and other thought leaders and disruptors that are really shaping the future of tomorrow, and we hope that together we can build a sustainable impact. Before we start, I would like to thank our partner GSMA, who made today's episode possible.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Seedstars podcast. My name is Romulo and I'm here with Kenneth. Hello, Kenneth. Nice to have you here in the podcast. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, hi, Romulo.
Thanks for connecting all the way from Suva, from Fiji Islands. Can you quickly tell me and tell the audience what is it that you're doing with Traceable Solution, just so that we enter into the context?
Great, yeah, thanks. And firstly, a big bulavinaka from Fiji. We're in the middle of the Pacific Islands, and so Traceable Solutions. My wife and I, Shauna, my wife, we started Traceable Solutions about just a little over 2 years ago, and we started it really looking at the transparency aspects of the seafood supply chain. So looking at how traceability can be used to verify the provenance of seafood products that originate from this part of the world initially, and since then I think our scope has kind of increased. We're looking outside of the Pacific, really looking at seafood traceability as well as agriculture traceability.
Okay, interesting. So seafood and agriculture. And when you mention traceability, if I understand correctly, this is the capacity for a consumer or anybody in the supply chain to understand what's the origin, what's the process like from the moment that the fish is caught until the moment that it's served in your fish. Is this correct?
Yeah, so that's really like the end product, right? The consumer-facing end of traceability, where a consumer would be able to interact with the product and to perhaps scan a code on it and see that story. But traceability is a bit more than that. So it's in our case, we're able to track a fish from the point it's caught on a fishing vessel. So we have fishing vessels that go out to sea for several weeks at a time. Every single fish is individually tagged, and then we're able to trace that particular fish all the way through. So it does several things. We start to collect data at each point of this fish's journey, and that data can be used for various things. So for regulatory purposes, it can be used to prove the legality of the fish. It can be used for health, food safety, and quality control. To ensure that that fish was kept at the proper standards throughout its journey through the supply chain. So that's there's a whole lot of benefits to traceability.
Absolutely. And I think it would be worth to perhaps explore a little bit more and go deeper into each of these different aspects and benefits of traceability. Let's just do that in a bit. I'm actually curious to know how did you come up with this idea on building traceability?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my wife and I, our backgrounds are in fisheries.
Okay.
She worked in fisheries in another country in the Pacific called Samoa, and I worked in the broader Pacific region in fisheries. And my background is tech as well. So I'm a software developer by training, and I guess we saw the opportunity of traceability, really because Nobody else in the Pacific was doing it. So, and seafood resources in the Pacific is a huge revenue earner for many countries. It's one of the biggest resources. About say 60% of the world's tuna comes from the Pacific. So it's a huge resource that needs to be well managed and needs to be sustainable for the countries in the Pacific. And so we figured that this was an area that we were both passionate about, and that we really wanted to commit our time to doing. So we left our jobs and we moved back to Fiji. At that time, we were living out of Fiji. We moved back to my home country, Fiji, and then we started Traceable Solutions from then.
Okay, and when you took this decision of going back to your home country, so to Fiji Islands, and to start devoting your time to traceability, were there other players in the market that you could have as reference, or was it something that you built it up on your own?
Yeah, so not in the market that we're in, so certainly not in the Pacific market. So we had to look outside of the Pacific to see what people were doing in traceability. So, as we did that, as we did our market research and, we saw what everyone was doing, we actually got to know those companies pretty well. And then we started to meet these people in different conferences. So the traceability community is quite a small group. And this is the global traceability community. So the community that works on seafood traceability, for example. It's quite a small group, and everyone kind of knows each other. So we use that their experiences, their successes, their failures, and we help that to shape the company that we started.
Okay. And I guess you took the different learnings you've had to adapt it to the local market, to the fishing industry in Fiji Islands, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the big things about us is a lot of the technological solutions that might work in developed countries or in other parts of the world, say Africa, the Caribbean, they need to be tweaked for its application here, locally. So that's what we did. Learning, continuously learning is a big part of our process. We've tried a lot of things and failed at many and learned from it. So that's that continuously drives our improvement process. And so we've built what we believe is a solution that is suitable for our environment and suitable for developing countries, really.
No, it's great because it's many times said by some people that want to pursue the entrepreneurial, let's say, journey, that they say, oh, well, this already exists somewhere else, or I've already seen this somewhere in another place, or they get their inspiration for something they saw in a conference and suddenly they want to implement it back to their country, but they're like, okay, but it already exists. But they maybe underestimate the capacity of execution and adapting, knowing well your market, your stakeholders. That's an entire exercise. How was it for you to go back to Suva and to start building traceability solutions and having to deal with perhaps a market that was not necessarily exposed to the entire universe of traceability?
Yeah, so it was quite exciting at first. Still is exciting, but also very challenging. Challenging for many reasons, because traceability and our model is based on software as a service. So things like software as a service, cloud-based software, they're still fairly new in the Pacific. Businesses are not really haven't really caught on and haven't really seen the value of them yet. So very challenging environment to work in, and traceability itself, really difficult to explain to people why they need traceability in their business operations. The other challenging space for us was just getting started. Neither of us had any business experience. We've never, this is our first business, and just going through the loopholes, going through the various regulations, and it was a really difficult challenge for us. But we came out of it quite well, and we learned a lot from it. And using that experience, we were able to advise probably people who are interested in starting up a business, what they can expect from that.
If you could go back in time, you mentioned that you didn't have a business background. Would you do things differently? Perhaps make somebody from a business background join your team initially?
Yeah, definitely. I think with the benefit of hindsight, we would have done things differently. I think one of the really good experiences was the Seedstars boot camp that we went through prior to the Seedstars Suva event, and like a lot of the things we were learning, we were like, oh man, we wish we'd known this when we started. So definitely, I mean, we would have, I guess, ensured that we would have someone with a business background, perhaps someone with a financial background as well, that would be able to help us at least start off. But having said that, we've managed to last this long, and over time we've developed the skills and the capacity we needed. We've also built the relationships we needed to build to be successful at this stage. So right now we're focused on that next step, on scaling this up and in seeing how far we can go with it.
Definitely. And I would like to just touch base on that you mentioned on the boot camp that we organize. Not because we organize it per se, but I think that I would love to know, and perhaps other players that are listening to this podcast as well, either they are startup ecosystem builders or they are accelerators, incubators. Since you won the event, the local event in Fiji Islands, what have you changed specifically within your startup? Which learnings have you let's say implemented?
Oh, yeah, quite a lot actually. um, I think just going through that whole process of identifying the market, identifying your customers, going through the whole customer acquisition process, and a lot of the things that we learned, the different tools and tool sets and templates that we learned through the bootcamp. We actually apply that now in our daily operations, in our strategic discussions about our company. So that that has really been helpful. And I mean, all of this type of content you can find easily online, but it's quite different having people who know how to deliver the content, who have experience in delivering the content, and have experienced it themselves. Like the Seedstars mentors that came across. That was really useful, and a really good program to go through for us at the stage that we were in. So yeah. So right now, we spend quite a lot of time, identifying, who our customers are, where our bottlenecks in our customer acquisitions are, and how we can improve that, how we can improve our, our lead cycles and all of that. So that's and I think one of the other things was, around the metrics. Yeah, so that's been a really good learning for us is the different metrics that we can use to evaluate the performance of our business, and that's something we've also implemented, internally.
No, I'm super glad that it was useful and that you actually took the theory to the practice and that is benefiting your startup. Let's go to the core now of let's say traceability. You mentioned before certain aspects which traceability can really have an influence in, like for example regulatory issues, legal aspects, safety, quality control of the food, health as well. Let's perhaps start with something that can be very relevant to what is happening right now in the world, which is the COVID-19 pandemic. So let's talk about the health. How can traceability help, let's say, in the middle of these pandemics, or contribute to the health conversation?
Yeah, so that's I guess a really good question for this particular time. I guess in terms of COVID-19, and you're thinking about food systems, I guess people would be wary about how their food is handled, the packaging, who handles the packaging. Perhaps they'd be worried about say someone perhaps with COVID-19 handling their food packages, and if it's a relatively short supply chain where it gets to you in a matter of hours, then that could be of concern about spreading the disease and whatnot. And in recent I think recent news, I think it was perhaps in South America, there's a case of COVID-19 in a
tiger.
seafood process. seafood processing factory.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and I think that may have shut down their operations. So traceability helps, I guess, identify that particular product and how it went through the supply chain. If you take traceability in a lot more detail, it could even be looking at the packaging, where you source the packaging from. It could be even who handled it, who were working in a processing factory while your fish was being cut up, or processed. So all of those things matter. And then if perhaps someone was say found out to have say COVID-19 or whatever else, then traceability would help in product recalls. So you'd be able to identify which batch of products was processed at that time by that particular group of workers, and then you could recall it. So it could help in that sense.
Absolutely. So it's not just this COVID-19, but pretty much anything, any pandemic or any let's say safety and health issue that can happen. It's good to have this traceability implemented in the supply chain. And I've read and you've told me also that within traceability with your startup, you are using blockchain as a technology to really ensure that there is the security aspect well taken care of. Can you quickly tell us a little bit, and perhaps in, let's say, in simple language for those who don't understand what blockchain is, how does blockchain work within traceability?
Yeah, another good question, and a question we often get asked. So our work in blockchain really has been, I guess, exploratory. We've been involved in using blockchain technology for almost as long as our company has been in operation. So when we started our company, we had the opportunity to join a project led by the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, the WWF. So we implemented a blockchain traceability project here in Fiji for them. And at the time, it was working with a blockchain provider, Consensus, based out of the United States. So going through that process, we quickly saw the value proposition that blockchain has, and really it's around trust. So being able to ensure digital trust, and being able to I guess carry on that trust through the supply chain and have different parties verify that those products. So in a nutshell, the blockchain really is it's a distributed ledger. So essentially, a record of your product being kept in multiple locations around the world, where people talk about immutability, where you can't really delete any record of that particular product. So you can only add on to it. So that creates, what it creates is an audit trail for that particular product, going back to its source. And that's where our efforts have been in blockchain technology. And through that work we did with the WWF, I think we realized very quickly that learning the technology is not very hard, and we had a really good use case. I think supply chain is one of the biggest use cases of blockchain technology.
Okay.
And so we essentially built our own traceability platform, our blockchain enabled traceability platform, based on that, and that we offer that as a service to our customers.
Great. And I'm curious to know, how did you learn yourself about blockchain? Did you have to read a lot, or did you pretty much surround yourself with experts? How was that? And here, maybe maybe to put some context, I want to ask this question because in many businesses and startups that are being launched out there is a technological aspect or component that perhaps the founders do not manage necessarily well. And there's always the question, okay, I need to hire somebody expert in this, or should I get a mentor or an advisor? And the trust as well on, okay, this person is going to join probably the startup as a member. So how did that work for you?
Yeah, so I think my involvement in blockchain really has been out of interest. So initially, a lot of reading, participating in a number of blockchain events around the world, and then eventually going through the Consensus Academy. So I went through I received the scholarship to go through the Consensus Academy, which is a virtual academy where they provide training on the Ethereum blockchain. And so successfully completing that, I became the first certified blockchain developer here in Fiji. And since then, it's just I guess with the background of over a decade of writing software, it was easy to apply. Blockchain is just another programming language for me. And we had a pretty good use case, so we were able to really see how quickly the benefit was of applying it. And and to your second question, I guess it is true. Like for startups, they would require people that have expertise. Unfortunately, like for us, we essentially bootstrapped our startup, and so we didn't really have the benefit of having the resources to hire other folks. But even the blockchain community is quite relatively small. So through a number of events that I've attended around the world, and through the academy as well, I've been connected to quite a number of blockchain developers, who are doing really exciting things around the world in different startups. So we maintain a network of people, and we collaborate where possible. So just learning from them and then just applying that here and trying to influence people to take up the interest of blockchain.
Absolutely. I'm taking note of all the learnings to give to entrepreneurs. Like so far I have, like networking conferences, then continuously train yourself, like the Blockchain Academy you just mentioned, bootstrap as much as you can, so you can really push yourself and not necessarily receive investment from the very beginning. How was the investment part for you? Have you received investment yourself?
No, we haven't, and we haven't really been looking at investment.
Okay.
So we wanted to bootstrap it as much as possible. We had some investors who showed interest prior to the Seedstars event, and so we our approach has been taking it really slowly, trying to understand what the investment would mean for us as a company. And the other thing, being in this particular environment in say in the Pacific, where the startup ecosystem is very immature, there isn't a lot of experience around investment or knowledge of investment in companies here. So our approach has been just being cautious and trying to seek as much advice as possible. We're really grateful to the Seedstars event. We connected with a number of investors who've shown some interest, and so we're just going through that, the next step of that process with them. So hopefully, perhaps something good will come out of it, and we'll have an investor that that aligns with our vision and our goals as a company as well as theirs.
And adds value to each other, right? Because you said something super important, which is not necessarily money sometimes, but also like advice, connections, industry access, and so on. Sometimes this is more even valuable than cash per se. So yeah, actually, I was supposed to go to Fiji to the event that we brought there, thanks to GSMA. I couldn't in the end because of availability, but I was happy to know that it was the first time we go to the middle of the Pacific, to Fiji Islands, to bring Seedstars events to the local community. And you mentioned that perhaps the ecosystem it can be quite early stage. What is it that you think, from your point of view as an entrepreneur and already with some international experience and successful one? What is it that you think it's needed for your local ecosystem?
Yeah, so several things. I think firstly, the process of starting up a business, that whole business process thing, really needs to be sorted out. It should be a lot easier to be able to ideate and then start something up and then and work, start generating business out of it. Right now, it's just really challenging. There's a lot of hurdles, a lot of regulations and rules to follow. And I guess the next thing really is around. I think it's also around having what's the word I'm looking for? It's about having people that you look up to, or companies that have done it.
Like role models.
Correct. Yeah, role models. That's the word. So having a role model that you could look up to. So when we started, or if I look back at my career and think about who the role models are in the Pacific or in Fiji, I think they're very little tech role models. So it's just having those things, having that idea that someone else has done it and that you can do it as well. I think that's really important.
Absolutely. Let's go a little bit deep now into the traceability, into the fishing industry. So we talked about the health aspect of it and the food safety one. And then quality control. What about the legal and the regulatory aspect of it? What is it that specifically traceability can help in this aspect? And here I've read a lot about. So sorry to interrupt, but I've read a lot about sometimes the working conditions, forced working, human trafficking, slavery. So is this something that actually happens? Is this something that it's a real issue?
Yeah, so there's several things there when you talk about fisheries. So forced labor is certainly something that happens in the industry, and there have been numerous cases of it. There's also what's referred to as IUU, so illegal, unregulated, unreported fishing, which is also quite a big challenge in fisheries globally, not just in the Pacific. So in the Pacific, I think there was a study done recently that estimated it at about, I think it was about, say, $500 million annually in lost revenue, which translated to several $billion when you consider processed seafood products. So that's the value that's being taken out of economies in the Pacific. So traceability, when you're right from the source, when you're identifying, when you catch a fish and you're able to tag it and to identify that to a particular location, being able to do that, automatically helps you, prove that that particular fish was caught legally, was caught in the right jurisdiction. So that's part of what traceability can do as well. It's also about complying with whatever regulations and laws there are, and collecting data electronically really helps with that, because there's a whole bunch of data that's collected right now in global fisheries, but a lot of it is captured on paper, and the value of that over time, it kind of decreases if you're not able to verify and utilize the data. So traceability, doing it electronically, really helps with that. So for our clients, it's really about helping them comply with the laws. So previously they fill out manually, they fill out logbooks on board the fishing vessel for everything, every fishing set they do. But now they can record that onto a tablet, and then that data syncs onto our databases, and they can just extract a report from it. So those types of small interventions really help, not just with the fishing industry, but also from the compliance and regulatory side, to ensure that the seafood product is legal. I think forced labor is a huge challenge as well, and something that's a lot of attention is being paid to right now. It's not that common here in Fiji, but certainly in the high seas in the Pacific, there would be instances of it. And that's something, and traceability is probably maybe one tool in a suite of tools that would help address those types of challenges.
Okay, what are the other types of tools? I'm curious to know.
Oh, so the other types of things would really be like enforcement. Having vessels on the high seas, stopping these fishing vessels and checking their crews. It could even be, I think, in some countries like in Thailand, what they're trying to do is with some NGOs, they're doing surveys, anonymous surveys of fishing boat crew to see if they're being treated well.
Okay.
And being able to feed that information back to the relevant authorities, so something can be done about it.
Yeah.
But traceability, it all comes down to if say a fishing vessel has been involved in, say, forced labor or illegal activity, and there's fish caught from that ends up in a can of tuna, and ends up on the supermarket shelves. Wouldn't you want to know whether that company was involved in those types of activities or not? And traceability can certainly help with that.
You raise a very good point, which is like the responsibility of knowing this type of information from the consumer. And sometimes consumers could have a tendency of just, buy the cheapest one or buy the one that, their favorite brand or the one that is packaged better. And sometimes even in my inner circle, I heard people, oh, I don't read the labels, as long as it looks good and as long as, like it's a good promotion, I will just buy it. What would be your message to, let's say, to the consumer community out there in terms of any recommendations, or what message would you like to pass on in terms of, knowing where your food comes from?
It's really important to know where your food comes from. I think being in the Pacific, we're a lot closer to the source of our food. So we can go to the market and buy fresh fish. We can go to a market and also get fresh vegetables, and we know where it comes from. Whereas say in more developed countries, if you're buying a can of tuna, you really don't know where it comes from, and I think it's very important that they do, for several reasons. Firstly, for the food safety aspects of it. Secondly, it's also about knowing that that particular seafood came from sustainable seafood stocks, and also was legally caught and things like that. I think that's important to know, and I think if people had a greater appreciation of the things that happen in the seafood supply chain, things like forced labor and whatever else you have, then they certainly would want to, I guess, pay closer attention to what they're buying. For us as a traceability company, a lot of companies, NGOs and whatnot, they see traceability as a way to, I guess, create these premium or these niche products, where you can sell your fish at a higher price. For us, we don't actually believe that. Our belief is, having traceability technology that's affordable, and that every single product, can be traceable at an affordable price, so that the end consumer wouldn't have to make the decision based on price. What they can afford will be able to be traced.
Yeah, no, and it's hopeful to think that we could be in a world once that we can know all the sources of our food, where our food comes from, and this becomes kind of the norm and not like the exception or the niche. Like wherever you go, you buy and you know exactly what were the conditions of the supply chain and so on. I guess as well, like the aspect of traceability, and you mentioned something in regards of data, can also help people in the supply chain to take better decisions, because now they are able to see data in an aggregated way and so on. So for me, it's like no-brainer, right? Like you have the efficiency, you're optimizing your land utilization, you are probably increasing your capacity, food security, you are complying with regulatory aspects, you're decreasing waste perhaps, and you also mentioned like what was before in paper, now it's electronic, so you're even contributing to the environment, consciousness and friendliness. Why would some organization or company wouldn't want to be traceable, let's say? And I guess I know a little bit the answer, but just to make sure.
Yeah. So there's a lot of factors in that as well. I think if you look at seafood companies in general, a lot of them probably family owned, have been operating for generations, and so perhaps not very familiar with what technology can provide and what it means for their business. So some reluctance into going tech. They've been fishing the way they've been fishing for years. Why should they change? What's the benefit for them? I guess the other aspect, some perhaps some, they probably already know that they're not doing things legally. They're not being transparent, so it's just a way to hide what they're doing, so that they probably wouldn't want to have a traceability system in place. And I'm sure that there are other factors. A lot of the companies we speak to, most of them are probably run and operated by older men, and I think that that probably plays a role in the decision making. So being able to convince them to use technology in their business, where it would make it more transparent, where they'd be able to leverage data. I think for them, it's really a hard sell. Um, so something that we've struggled with from time to time, but it's slowly increasing. The acceptance is increasing.
What would you say to that entrepreneur that perhaps it's in a place that is as remote as Fiji Islands can be? And me, for example, growing up in Peru, I thought that I was so far away from everything in the world, from everything that was happening. Not maybe in the recent years, but when I was younger, yes, I was like, who is going to care about the idea that I have, me as a Peruvian little boy? And for me, your case is a success case, because then, like, you really succeeded. You went back to your country, you built out your startup. You are now talking to international players using blockchain technology. What is, let's say, your message of hope to that little boy or little girl in a remote place who wants to change the world, contribute to something, but perhaps thinks that from wherever they are standing right now, they fear that they might not be able to do it?
Yeah, I guess good question as well. Um, I think everything starts from having the right mindset, and anything really is possible within a certain amount of reason. I think what for anyone looking at entrepreneurship, you shouldn't be afraid of failing. Shouldn't be afraid of making a fool of yourself or whatnot. If you certainly believe in the vision that you're trying to pursue, if you certainly believe that it'll have an impact on your community, on your the environment you live in, and on your people, that's certainly those are certainly things that help motivate us and drive us, because we know that fisheries is a big resource. So it's also finding out about what you're passionate about, and that can really help your community, help your people, and probably help your country even. So if you take things from that angle, if you're willing to learn and work hard, and you're willing to fail, then that's a good point to start any type of entrepreneurship enterprise.
It's good to give that advice, I guess, because sometimes the concept of failure for more seasoned entrepreneurs is completely managed, but for maybe people that are starting, they want to do everything perfect, because they don't want to fail. But at the end, you will fail.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Kenneth, just to wrap up. So as you know, at Seedstars, we chose some entrepreneurs around the world, some people that for us, you are one of our heroes. You're really a source of inspiration. But we would also like to ask you, who is your source of inspiration? Who is your hero?
That's a good question. One I haven't really thought about. Yeah, so I mean, for us, there are a number of sources of inspiration for us. We have to just look at within our community, the people that are doing great work in fisheries, that are looking to protect our oceans, and that are looking to protect our environment and the land. There's heaps of inspiration there for us. The government of Fiji has been quite vocal in climate change work, and has taken a leadership role in that. And there are a lot of people, a lot of organizations that are doing really good work. So we draw from multiple sources of inspiration, really. And I think what was really unique about Seedstars, and we're really grateful to have been part of Seedstars, is that just being in the same conversations with all these entrepreneurs from all around the world, it's been really inspiring for us. I mean, just hearing people talk about what their passions are, what they're working on, and why they're working on it, and it really gives us hope. It also gives us comfort knowing that we're not the only ones failing at certain things. Yeah, but I mean we draw a lot of inspiration from that. So yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Peer-to-peer inspiration. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool, and I really hope also that the youth in Fiji Islands can find inspiration in you as well, and you can be this role model that they actually can look up to and say, okay, I can do it as well. Let's just quickly mention what are the next steps. You mentioned something about also agricultural traceability. So what are the next steps for traceability solutions?
Yeah, so we're already in agriculture traceability.
Okay.
We're tracking fresh fruit and vegetable exports out of Fiji, and we're about to release our it's not so much traceability, but it's a digital agriculture platform. So it's a mobile app and a web-based platform called Traceable Farms. So we're just about to release that into the community, and we are starting to onboard different agribusinesses onto our platform, different organizations. And so the whole concept really is about digitization. It's about collecting data. It's about leveraging that data, for really good decision making, and also for from the farmer's perspective, it's about giving them information that they need to be successful, with what they're growing and being able to sell their products at a reasonable price in the market. So we see that as a huge opportunity. Agriculture again is one of the biggest sectors in the Pacific and probably around the world. And in this part of the world, there isn't a lot of good use of technology there. So probably less so than in our fisheries work. So I guess more of an opportunity for us to have impact in, and we were certainly seeing that because we're probably one of the probably a very few operators that have experience building these types of solutions and also deploying it. So yeah, very exciting times for us in agriculture.
Exciting. Can't wait to see. Yeah. Can't wait to see how this evolves. So Kenneth, I really hope to see you sometime and to meet you personally. Right now, I think you are literally on the other side of the world. We are complete opposites. It's your evening and it's my morning. So yeah, so all the best of the lucks for you and your team. Yeah, I hope we can meet soon. Thanks a lot for joining us at the Seedstars podcast.
Great. Thank you very much, Romulo. Really, really great to have a chat with you again.
Great. Bye-bye. Right. Take care.
Bye-bye. Right.
Thank you for listening to our hero's journey, and subscribe now for more stories on Seedstars podcast.